The dirt was still fresh on my mother's coffin when I realised something was wrong with my marriage. I remember how the damp earth clung to my black gloves as I scooped up a handful to let it scatter over the polished mahogany. A hollow ritual. My mother wouldn't care about dirt. She wouldn't care about the perfectly arranged lilies or the way the pastor's voice cracked on the word beloved. She was gone, and no amount of ceremony could change that. Kevin stood beside me, his fingers laced through mine like he was afraid I'd collapse if he let go. How considerate. His grip was too tight, the way it always was when he was nervous, like he was bracing for impact. I should have known then. The sky was the colour of wet cement, threatening rain but never delivering. Appropriate, really. Even the weather couldn't commit to mourning properly. Around us, a small crowd of relatives and my mother's friends shifted awkwardly, their eyes darting between me and the casket, unsure where to land. Do we look at the grieving daughter or the dead woman? And then his phone buzzed. A single, muffled vibration from his jacket pocket. I felt it more than heard it, the way his entire body tensed for half a second before he forced himself to relax. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, an absent-minded, there gesture, but his jaw was tight. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Who texts a man at his mother-in-law's funeral? Maybe it was work. Maybe it was some automated reminder about a bill. Or maybe it was her. I let my gaze drift to his face. He was staring straight ahead, his expression carefully arranged into something solemn and supportive. But his eyes kept flickering. Down, toward his pocket, then back up. Just once. Just enough. The pastor droned on about eternal rest and the Lord's embrace, but all I could think about was how Kevin had hesitated that morning when I asked if he wanted coffee. A beat too long. A fraction of a second where his brain was somewhere else before he said, "Sure, thanks." I dropped the dirt. It hit the casket with a soft thud. Kevin squeezed my hand again, like he thought I needed comforting. Maybe I did. Just not from him. Later, in the car, he drove in silence. No radio, no small talk. Just the sound of the wipers dragging across dry glass. He kept both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, the way he did when he was thinking too hard. "You okay?" he finally asked. I almost laughed. "No, Kevin, I'm not okay. My mother is dead, and you're acting like a man who's waiting for an alibi to hold." But I didn't say that. I just nodded and watched the cemetery gates disappear behind us. That was the moment, I think, when I knew. Not the details, not the how or the who, but the quiet, certain understanding that the man beside me was already gone. And I'd be damned if I let him take any more of me with him. The house smelled wrong the moment we stepped inside. Not the stale, closed-up scent of a home left empty for a funeral, but something cloying and floral, like someone had doused the air in perfume to cover their tracks. It clung to the back of my throat, sweet and invasive. Jasmine, not my scent, never mine. Kevin moved through the hallway like a man walking through a crime scene, careful not to disturb anything. His shoes came off too neatly by the door. His jacket folded over the chair with deliberate precision. Every motion calculated, rehearsed. I should have gone straight to bed, collapsed into the exhaustion of grief and slept for days. But grief makes you sharp in ways you don't expect. It strips away the numbness and leaves you raw, hyper-aware. So I noticed things. The bed was made, not just straightened, but done. Hospital corners, pillows fluffed, the comforter smoothed down with military tightness. I never made the bed like that. Neither did Kevin. I ran a hand over the duvet. The fabric was cool, but beneath it the sheets held a faint warmth, as if someone had just slipped out of them. My fingers brushed against something hard on the nightstand, a single diamond stud, small but unmistakable, winking up at me under the lamplight. Lena's. I knew without checking. She'd worn them to our wedding, flashing them every time she laughed at Kevin's jokes, her hand always finding his arm a second too long. "Just friends," he'd said. "You're imagining things," he'd said. The bathroom light was still on. A slip of silk, black, expensive, draped over the hamper, the sleeves crumpled like it had been pulled off in a hurry. I lifted it. The fabric was damp. Kevin appeared in the doorway, his face unreadable. "You okay?" I held up the blouse. "Yours?" A beat, then another. His throat worked. "Amelia." I didn't let him finish. I didn't need to. The truth was in the air, in the bed, in the way his eyes darted to the earring still sitting on the nightstand like a confession. I dropped the blouse back into the hamper. "I'm going to shower." The water ran scalding, but I didn't feel it. All I could think about was how long this had been going on. How many times I'd left the house, trusting him, while he brought her into our bed. How many lies I'd swallowed because I hadn't wanted to see. When I turned off the water, the house was silent. Kevin was gone. But her perfume still lingered. He waited until midnight to come home. I sat at the kitchen island, a glass of wine untouched in front of me, watching the clock tick past each hour with glacial slowness. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums against your skin. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't call anyone, just sat there in the dark, turning the earring between my fingers like a cursed talisman. The front door opened with the careful click of someone hoping not to be heard. Kevin's shadow stretched across the floor as he paused in the doorway, his keys dangling from one finger like he was just returning from a business meeting instead of wherever he'd been licking his wounds. "You're still up," he said. Not a question. An accusation. I lifted the earring into the light. "We should talk about this." His face did that thing, the slight twitch of his eyebrows, the quick press of his lips together, the same expression he made when negotiating a tough contract at work. Calculating. "Talk about what?" "Lena's earring, in our bed, while I was burying my mother." A beat too long. Then the performance began. "Baby," he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're exhausted. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly." He moved towards me with open palms, the picture of concerned husband. "That could be anyone's earring. Maybe one of your friends left it last time they were over." I almost admired how easily the lies slid out. Almost. "Funny," I said, setting the earring down with deliberate precision. "Because the silk blouse in our hamper, that's from La Perla, the same store Lena tags in all her Instagram posts." His jaw tightened. "That's a hell of a coincidence." "Is it?" I stood, meeting him eye to eye. "Or is it just sloppy?" The mask slipped then. Just for a second. A flash of something ugly in his eyes before he schooled his features back into that wounded puppy look he'd perfected over the years. "I can't believe you'd accuse me of this. Today, of all days." "Actually," I said, reaching into my pocket, "I didn't accuse you of anything yet." I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. The security app loaded with a cheerful chime. "But let's see what the bedroom camera caught. Shall we?" His face drained of colour. "You don't have a camera in there." "No," I agreed, "but you didn't know that." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched the realization crash over him, that I'd played him, that his carefully constructed denials meant nothing. His shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. It didn't mean anything. I laughed then, sharp and humorless. It meant everything. The clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere outside, a car alarm wailed into the night. And just like that, our marriage was over. By sunrise, I had already burned his world to the ground. I didn't sleep that night, didn't cry, didn't rage. Instead, I sat at my laptop in the pale blue light of dawn, drafting emails with the cold precision of a general preparing for battle. My lawyer's number was on speed dial before her office even opened. Amelia? Susan's voice crackled through the phone, still thick with morning grogginess. Do you know what time it... He cheated. I want him gone by tomorrow. The line went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then I heard the rustle of sheets as she sat up straight. Give me 2 hours. Kevin woke to the sound of locksmiths changing the front door code. He stumbled into the hallway in wrinkled boxers, his hair sticking up in every direction, squinting against the morning sun streaming through the now open curtains. What the hell? Your suitcase is by the garage, I said, not looking up from my coffee. The black one. I'd hurry if I were you. The movers are coming at noon to box up the rest of your things. His face cycled through shock, anger, then something dangerously close to amusement. You're overreacting. We can work through this. I slid a manila folder across the counter. Inside, printouts of our bank statements, with his recent hotel charges highlighted in neon yellow. The Grand Hyatt, Kevin? Really? You couldn't even spring for somewhere original? His smirk died. By 10 a.m., our joint accounts were frozen. By noon, his company HR department had received an anonymous tip about inappropriate workplace relationships. Funny how Lena just happened to be his junior associate. By 3 p.m., his mother called me in tears, begging me to reconsider. I am sorry, Margaret, I said, watching the movers haul out his golf clubs. But your son made his choice when he fucked his ex in our bed while I was burying my mother. The dial tone sounded almost immediately. Kevin showed up at the house at dusk, his key no longer working, pounding on the door like a man possessed. You can't do this. His voice cracked through the wood. We had a life together. I turned off the porch camera and muted the doorbell. Outside, I heard the satisfying crunch of gravel as he kicked over one of the potted plants I'd always hated. Somewhere in the city, Lena was probably pouring him a drink, stroking his ego, telling him I was a hysterical bitch who didn't understand him. Let her have him. I poured myself a martini, extra dirty, just how I liked it, and toasted the empty house, to fresh starts, to clean breaks, and, most importantly, to revenge served so perfectly chilled it left frostbite. Kevin showed up at Lena's apartment with a duffel bag and a sob story, expecting sanctuary. What he got was a front row seat to his own humiliation. The door swung open before he could knock a second time. Lena stood there in a silk robe, her hair mussed just enough to suggest he'd interrupted something. Behind her, the apartment smelled like expensive candles and sex. Kevin? Her voice carried all the warmth of a bank statement. This really isn't a good time. He shifted his weight, the bag slipping from his shoulder. I just need to talk. Amelia kicked me out. A beat passed. Then Lena laughed, not the light flirty laugh he was used to, but something darker, more dismissive. And you came here. Jesus, you really are predictable. Footsteps padded behind her. A man's voice called from the bedroom, lazy and familiar. Babe, who is it? Kevin's stomach dropped. He knew that voice. Mark stepped into view, shirtless, a towel slung low on his hips. Kevin's college roommate, the one who'd always joked about Lena being out of his league. Mark's grin widened. The ex-husband? Lena leaned against the doorframe, examining her nails. We were going to tell you next week. Mark and I are moving to Milan. His firm's relocating him. The duffel bag hit the floor with a thud. Kevin's mouth worked, but nothing came out. All those months of sneaking around, the promises Lena had whispered in hotel rooms, the way she'd sworn Amelia never understood him, none of it had been real. Mark draped an arm around Lena's shoulders. Sorry, man. Business and pleasure, you know? Lena didn't even have the decency to look guilty. She just shrugged. It was fun while it lasted. Then, softer, almost pitying. You should have known better than to leave your wife for a woman who never stays with one man for long. The door clicked shut in his face. Outside, rain began to fall, soaking through his jacket. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm wailed. Kevin stood there, staring at his reflection in the darkened glass of Lena's door, and realised two things at once. He had nowhere to go. Amelia had seen this coming from miles away. The irony tasted like blood in his mouth. He'd blown up his life for a woman who'd never even considered him a priority. And the worst part, Amelia would have known better than to say, "I told you so." She'd just let the silence speak for itself. I didn't post the photo of the earring. I didn't share screenshots of hotel receipts or write a tearful caption about betrayal. That would have been too obvious, too messy. Instead, at precisely 9:17 p.m. on a Thursday, when engagement rates were highest, I uploaded a simple black square with 3 words in crisp white font. "Funerals reveal character." The likes rolled in immediately. Comments flooded my DMs within minutes. "Oh, honey, what happened? Do you need anything? Who do I need to fight?" But I didn't respond to a single one. Let them speculate, let them wonder. The vaguer the post, the louder the whispers would grow. By Friday morning, Kevin's sister had unfollowed him on Instagram. By Saturday, his golf buddies were suddenly busy for their weekly tea time. On Monday, someone at his firm, maybe the receptionist who always side-eyed Lena's too frequent visits, maybe the intern who caught them in the elevator, leaked the full story to the office gossip chain. I knew the exact moment it reached critical mass. My phone buzzed with a text from Susan, my lawyer. "HR just called requesting his employment records. Thought you'd appreciate the update." That afternoon, I treated myself to lunch at the bistro Kevin always claimed was too pretentious. The waiter recognised me, his smile turning sympathetic as he poured my Pinot Grigio. "On the house, Miss Carter." I didn't correct him about the name. When I checked my phone, there was a new email notification. A forwarded message from Kevin's boss with the subject line, "Transition Plan." I swiped it away without opening it. Some victories taste better when you let them simmer. That evening, I scrolled past Lena's latest post, a blurry shot of champagne flutes clinking, captioned "New Beginnings," and smiled. I didn't block her, didn't unfollow, let her watch what happened next. Because while Kevin was scrambling to salvage his reputation, while Lena was packing her designer luggage for Milan, I was already 3 steps ahead, rebranding my life with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd finally stopped caring what anyone thought. The best revenge isn't shouting your pain from the rooftops. It's letting the world connect the dots themselves. Then stepping back to watch the dominoes fall in perfect, devastating silence. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, slipped under the door of the extended stay motel that had been his home for 3 weeks. The paper smelled like cheap ink and defeat. Non-payment of rent. Kevin crumpled it in his fist, the sound echoing through the cramped room that still reeked of stale fast food and desperation. His reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger's. Stubble too long, eyes bloodshot, the collar of his once crisp dress shirt frayed at the edges. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number, probably another creditor, or HR finally making good on their transition plan euphemism. He let it go to voicemail. The motel TV played a daytime talk show at low volume. The host laughed tinny and mocking. He flipped through his contacts, thumb hovering over Lena's name before remembering. Blocked. After Milan. After Mark. After she'd laughed in his face. His finger scrolled lower. Amelia. The last text she'd sent him was over a month ago, the day the divorce papers were finalised. "The keys are with the doorman. Don't call me again." Simple, clean. No room for negotiation. He dialed anyway. It rang once, twice. His pulse hammered in his throat. Then, "The number you have reached, disconnected." He hurled the phone at the wall. It bounced off with a pathetic clatter, screen spiderwebbing. Outside, a car horn blared. Someone shouted in the parking lot. The world kept moving, indifferent. The minibar was empty except for a single airline-sized vodka bottle. He cracked it open, the burn doing nothing to dull the sharper truth taking shape in his mind. He'd had everything. A wife who loved him, a home, respect, and he'd traded it all for a woman who saw him as a temporary distraction, for ego strokes that evaporated the second things got hard. The TV cut to a commercial, a jewelry ad. Happy couples holding hands, smiling like they'd never lied to each other, never fucked up beyond repair. Kevin laughed, a raw, broken sound. Somewhere across town, Amelia was probably sitting in her loft, sipping wine, building a life that didn't include him. Thriving. And he was here, alone, unemployed, drinking bottom-shelf liquor in a room that charged by the hour. The irony wasn't lost on him. He tipped the bottle back, draining the last bitter drops. The eviction notice stared up at him from the floor, its edges crumpled but its message clear. This is what rock bottom looks like. The loft smelled like fresh paint and possibility when I turned the key for the first time. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the empty space where my new life would begin. No memories lingered here. No ghosts, just clean lines and open air. I set my purse down on the unfinished concrete countertop, the sound echoing through the barren space. My realtor hovered near the doorway, tapping her clipboard nervously. "Are you sure you don't want the staging furniture? Most clients—" "I'm sure—" The words came out firmer than I intended. She flinched, but I didn't apologize. For the first time in years, I wasn't decorating for someone else's taste, wasn't compromising on fabric swatches or paint colours to keep the peace. This space would be mine alone. The movers arrived the next day with boxes labelled in Sharpie. Office, kitchen, books. Not a single one said Kevin. As they unloaded my things, I peeled the divorce decree from my bag and pinned it to the stainless steel refrigerator with a vintage Paris magnet my mother had bought me years ago. A reminder, a trophy. By week's end, the consulting firm website went live. Carter Solutions, cutting through the noise. The tagline made me smirk. Let Kevin see it when he inevitably Googled me in some motel room at 2 a.m. Let him choke on the irony. I celebrated my first client with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot in the empty bathtub, bubbles frothing over the edges as I scrolled past Lena's latest post. Her and Mark posing in front of some Italian fountain, her left hand conspicuously ringless. The champagne tasted sweeter knowing their fairy tale was already cracking. At night, I lay awake on my new mattress, king size, no indent where another body should be, listening to the hum of the city below. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, I'd catch myself reaching for a phone that no longer had his number saved. Then, I'd roll over, press my face into cool Egyptian cotton, and smile. The nightmares came less frequently now. No more waking in a cold sweat, groping for a wedding band that wasn't there. My therapist called it progress. I called it survival. When the magazine interview request came, successful women who reinvented themselves after 30 inches, I almost declined. Then I remembered the look on Kevin's face when he realised I'd outplayed him and typed back, "I'd be delighted." They photographed me against the loft's exposed brick wall, my posture straight, my smile unburdened. The caption read, "Amelia Carter," proving sometimes the best endings are new beginnings. I framed that article and hung it where anyone entering would see it immediately, just in case, because people like Kevin always come back when they hit bottom, and when he did, I wanted the first thing he to see to be everything he'd lost. The bell above the door jingled with the same cheerful indifference it always had. I was halfway through my almond milk latte when the air changed, that subtle shift in atmosphere that precedes a storm. Then I smelled it, his cologne, now layered with something sour beneath, like cheap whiskey and regret. Kevin stood at the counter, shoulders hunched in a jacket that had seen better days, fumbling with his wallet. The barista's polite smile had already frozen into something pitying. When he turned, our eyes met. His widened, a rabbit caught in headlights. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. I could have left, should have, maybe. But the sunlight was warm on my back, my latte perfectly foamed, and damn if I didn't want to see this up close. So, I stayed, watched as he weighed his options, flee or face the music. He chose poorly. Amelia? My name sounded foreign in his mouth, like he'd forgotten how to shape the syllables. He hovered by my table, fingers leaving damp prints on the to-go cup. You look good. I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch. Up close, the damage was more pronounced. The grey peppering his stubble, the yellowing bruise of exhaustion beneath his eyes. The Kevin I'd married would have rather died than be seen in public with a wrinkled collar. I heard about your firm, he tried again. Congrats! The laugh escaped before I could stop it. Let me guess. LinkedIn stalking at 3 a.m? A flush crawled up his neck. There it was, that same tell he'd had when lying about working late. Some things never change. Outside, a woman laughed high and bright. His gaze flickered to the window, to the reflection of us sitting there. Me in my tailored blazer, him in his unravelling seams. The contrast was almost poetic. He opened his mouth, to apologise, to beg, but I stood, gathering my bag with deliberate slowness. Good seeing you, Kevin. Wait. His hand twitched toward mine, but didn't quite make contact. Do you ever think about... No. The lie came easily, cleanly. But you clearly do. I left him there, stirring his black coffee with a splintered stick, the ghost of who we'd been hovering between us. The bell jingled again on my way out. This time, I didn't look back. The courier arrived with the advance copy just as I was finishing my morning espresso. The envelope was thick, expensive, the kind of paper stock that feels like victory beneath your fingertips. I let it sit on my kitchen counter for a full hour, savouring the anticipation like the last bite of a perfect dessert. When I finally slid the magazine free, my own face stared back from the cover. Not the carefully posed headshot I'd expected, but a candid shot from the rooftop photo shoot. Me mid-laugh, wind catching my hair, the city skyline glittering behind me. The bold white text across the bottom read, Amelia Carter, How to Turn Betrayal into a Blueprint. I traced the embossed letters. A year ago, I'd been picking up pieces of my shattered marriage. Now, I was the woman other women Googled at 2 a.m. when their own worlds crumbled. The article inside was even better. Not the saccharine, inspirational journey tripe I'd expected, but a razor-sharp profile that didn't shy away from the ugly parts. The nights I'd spent dry heaving into my bathroom sink, the way I'd burned every photo of us in a metal trash can behind my building, the exact dollar amount I'd taken from Kevin in the divorce settlement, highlighted in a bold pull quote that would undoubtedly haunt him. My phone started buzzing before I'd finished the second page. Mum, deceased, would have hated the photo. You look washed out in that lighting, she'd have said. Then she'd have bought 10 copies to leave conspicuously on her coffee table. Susan, attorney. They used my quote about you being ruthlessly pragmatic. Sending you the champagne emoji. Daniel, new? Saw the spread. When do I get the autographed copy? I was still grinning at that last one when another notification popped up, a LinkedIn alert. Kevin Carter viewed your profile. The timing was too perfect. I could picture him in some beige corporate apartment, the magazine splayed across his IKEA coffee table, his finger tracing the paragraph where I'd said, "Some men mistake kindness for weakness. That's why they're always so shocked when we stop being kind." I set the magazine down next to my keys, the cover facing outward. Let the delivery guys see it. Let my neighbours. Let the world. Because this wasn't just a feature, it was a reckoning. And Kevin? He'd always been good at reading between the lines. The cemetery gates creaked with the same reluctant protest as last time. 1 year, almost to the day, since I'd stood here in a black dress with Kevin's sweaty palm squeezing mine like a life preserver. Now, my heels sank slightly into the rain-softened earth as I walked alone, carrying 2 bouquets instead of 1. The stone was cleaner than I expected. No weeds crowding the base, no moss staining the letters of her name. Someone had been tending to it. I knelt, brushing away a single fallen leaf from the top edge before arranging the first bouquet. White lilies, her favourite. "Hi, Mum." A breeze kicked up, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and distant rain. I waited, half expecting some cosmic sign, a sudden ray of sunlight, a bird's song, but the universe remained stubbornly neutral. "I brought you something else?" I set down the second bouquet, a riot of yellow tulips wrapped in brown paper. "For the version of me you buried last time." The words hung between us, settling into the quiet. A jogger passed on the path behind me, their headphones leaking tinny bass. Down the hill, a groundskeeper whistled while trimming hedges. Life insistently continuing. I touched the cool marble. "You were right about him. Not that you'd say, 'I told you so.' You'd just give me that look over your martini glass and change the subject to my hair." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A calendar alert for my 3 p.m. investor meeting. The new Amelia would be punctual. The old Amelia might have stayed longer, might have spilled every messy detail about the divorce, the loft, the magazine feature. Instead, I stood brushing dirt from my knees. "I'm okay now," I said. Simple. True. As I turned to leave, I noticed fresh footprints in the damp soil near the adjacent plot. Too large to be the groundskeeper's. A single cigarette butt, Marlboro Reds, Kevin's brand, crushed near the base of a maple tree. I smiled then, not with bitterness, but something closer to pity. Of course he'd come here looking for absolution. Of course he'd found only silence. The tulips stood bright against the grey stone as I walked away, their petals just beginning to unfurl in the morning light. Behind me, the wind picked up, carrying the faintest whisper of jasmine from somewhere beyond the gates. I didn't look back. Midnight found me on the balcony of my loft, the city's pulse thrumming below in streaks of neon and headlights. The champagne flute in my hand caught the moonlight as I scrolled past Lena's latest post, a sunset over Lake Como. Her hand draped over Mark's chest, a diamond the size of a glacier on her finger. The caption read, "When you just know." I toasted the screen. "Cheers, bitch!" The bubbles burned going down. Across town, in a studio apartment with peeling linoleum and a leaky faucet, Kevin was probably doing the same, though with cheaper liquor and far poorer company. I could almost picture it, his phone casting blue shadows across his unshaven face as he stared at the same photo, realising too late that he'd been nothing more than a stepping stone in Lena's carefully calculated ascent. My phone buzzed. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. "You up? I've got that bottle of Macallan you like." I smiled, setting down my glass. The magazine lay open on the coffee table, my face frozen in that unguarded laugh. Beyond it, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered, a chessboard of possibilities I was only beginning to explore. Somewhere out there, Kevin was learning the hard way that karma didn't believe in quick fixes or happy endings, that you couldn't fuck over the woman who truly loved you and skip merrily into the sunset, that consequences had a way of circling back when you least expected them. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I texted Daniel back, "Bring the whiskey, I'll provide the glasses." As I turned off the lights, one last notification popped up. A LinkedIn alert. "Kevin Carter has viewed your profile again." This time I didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just swiped it away like the last remnant of a bad dream. The doorbell rang. Outside, a new beginning waited. And inside, only the quiet hum of a life rebuilt. Better this time, stronger, smarter, and gloriously, unforgettably mine.